the United States Navy has at least 10 warships operating around Iran. 10. At the center of this force is a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier, the USS Abraham Lincoln. Around it sail guided missile destroyers and literal combat ships positioned inside the Persian Gulf. And this force is still growing. Another U.S. Navy destroyer, the USS Truxtun, is already on the move from the east coast of the United States, heading toward the Middle East. And according to the Wall Street Journal, the Pentagon is considering something even more serious: the possible deployment of a second aircraft carrier, the USS George H.W. Bush. 2 aircraft carriers, 2 floating air bases, thousands of sailors, hundreds of combat aircraft, and an unmistakable message. Why now? Why this scale? And how close are these ships to an actual confrontation? According to U.S. officials cited by major American media outlets, this deployment follows a direct order from the Trump administration to maintain a constant 2-carrier presence in the region. That phrase matters. A single aircraft carrier strike group is already an overwhelming force. 2 carrier strike groups operating in or near the same theater is something the U.S. Navy usually reserves for major wars or moments just before them, and there is a very specific carrier involved in these plans. The USS George H.W. Bush has recently been conducting intensive training exercises in the Atlantic Ocean. This is the standard final step before a combat deployment. In other words, this carrier is being prepared to move fast. If it sails toward the Middle East, the United States would effectively maintain 2 nuclear-powered supercarriers in the region at the same time. Maintaining 2 carriers means one thing: Washington does not want any gap in pressure. When one carrier eventually needs to rotate out for maintenance or resupply, another must already be in position. No pause, no breathing room, and Iran knows this. So the question is simple: is this about deterrence or preparation? This is not happening in a vacuum. Over the past few days, the situation has crossed from tense to dangerous. On February 3rd, a U.S. Navy F-35 stealth fighter operating from the USS Abraham Lincoln shot down an Iranian drone over the Arabian Sea. According to U.S. Central Command, the drone approached in an aggressive manner and ignored multiple warnings. This was not a warning shot. This was a kill. Only hours later, Iranian Revolutionary Guard fast attack boats attempted to intercept and board a U.S.-flagged oil tanker in the Strait of Hormuz, one of the most critical maritime choke points in the world. The attempt failed because the USS McFall, a guided missile destroyer, moved in and escorted the tanker to safety. But think about that for a moment. Fast boats, armed crews, a U.S. destroyer closing in at high speed. How many seconds would it take for that situation to spiral out of control? And that's not all. U.S. Navy crews have reported Iranian fast boats maneuvering dangerously close to American warships, sometimes surrounding them, sometimes forcing course changes to avoid collision. These are no longer simple patrols. Now let's talk about the USS Truxtun. This is an Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyer, one of the most capable surface combatants in the world. It carries Tomahawk cruise missiles capable of striking targets hundreds of miles inland, SM-2 and SM-6 missiles for air and missile defense, and evolved Sea Sparrow missiles designed to intercept drones, aircraft, and sea-skimming missiles. The Truxtun is not just a ship. It is a mobile missile battery, a radar node, and a shield for the fleet. Its arrival strengthens the U.S. Navy's ability to respond instantly, not just defensively, but offensively, and it may only be the beginning. If the USS George H.W. Bush is deployed, the situation changes dramatically. Like the Abraham Lincoln, it is a Nimitz-class nuclear-powered aircraft carrier, but it would bring its own air wing, its own escorting destroyers, and likely its own attack submarine operating silently below the surface. That means dozens more fighter jets, more electronic warfare aircraft, and more airborne early warning platforms. 2 carriers mean round-the-clock air operations without interruption, one launching aircraft while the other recovers them. This is sustained power projection. This is not posturing. This is readiness, and Iran is watching every move. The U.S. Navy ships currently deployed are designed for exactly the kind of threats Iran relies on: drones, layered air defenses, radar tracking, electronic jamming, interceptor missiles. fast attack boats, helicopters, naval guns, precision missiles, and coordinated fire control. Anti-ship missiles, Aegis combat systems capable of tracking and engaging multiple threats at once. Even the literal combat ships, often criticized, play a specific role here. Mine detection, shallow water operations, and rapid response inside the Persian Gulf. Every ship covers another's blind spots. Every movement is calculated. So the real question becomes, how long can this pressure hold before something breaks? But the naval buildup is only one part of the picture. Above the ships, the air component of this deployment is expanding just as fast, and in some ways, it is even more telling. On January 6, F-35, Lightning II stealth fighters were tracked, landing at Lajes Air Base in the Azores, a well-known transit point for U.S. aircraft, moving from the Americas toward the Middle East. At the same time, B-52 Stratofortress strategic bombers have been deployed to Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, conducting patrol and training missions alongside aerial refueling tankers. The message here is unmistakable. The United States is demonstrating long-range strike capability, the kind designed to reach deep into enemy territory if needed. And to sustain that kind of air war, fuel is everything. Flight tracking data has detected at least 8 KC-135 Stratotanker aircraft, along with other logistical support planes, moving toward the region. Electronic warfare and surveillance aircraft, including the P-8 Poseidon maritime patrol plane, have been operating near Iranian airspace, monitoring naval movements, missile activity, and communications across the region. All of this air power is supported by a dense network of U.S. bases across Qatar, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates, where an estimated 30,000 to 50,000 U.S. personnel are already stationed. So this is no longer just a naval deployment. It is a multi-domain force, ready to operate from the sea, from the air, and across the region. History shows us that wars often don't begin with a grand decision. They begin with an accident, a collision, a misread signal, a weapon fired too late or too early. With 10 U.S. warships already in place, with another destroyer on the way, and possibly a second aircraft carrier preparing to deploy, the margin for error is shrinking fast. Is this force enough to deter Iran, or does it increase the chance that the next incident goes too far? Because once the first shot is fired at sea, there is no rewind button.